80s nostalgia has never been stronger, and Hollywood is well aware of it. From homages like Stranger Things to remakes like the upcoming remake of Commando, a lot of 80s classics are getting updated for the modern day. We happen to have a wish list of movies from the 80s that shouldn't just be remade into movies. In this video, we talk about 8 of our favorite movies that can be turned into TV shows instead. We'll start with a bold choice, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. If you're one of the few people who haven't watched this movie yet, you need to fix that straight away. But for the quickest overview of what Ferris's Day Off was about, this teen comedy saw Ferris faking being sick to get out of school again. After bailing his girlfriend out of school, the two of them and Ferris's best friend go gallivanting through the city and get into some shenanigans. We think that Ferris Bueller could make for a hilarious sitcom. Ferris, Cameron, and Sloane would be the leads, and you'd have a side cast of characters that include their families. The villain, of course, would be Ed Rooney, the mean dean. Ferris is fond of breaking the fourth wall, so you can even have some community-style meta-weirdness going on. The sitcom format would allow writers to explore the characters' dynamics in better detail too. Will Sloane and Ferris actually be together in the end? Can Rooney loosen his tie and ease up on the rules? And can Ferris learn that school is important? Hollywood, take notes. From the bold to cliche, how about we consider a remake of Back to the Future? When it comes to remaking Back to the Future, we wouldn't necessarily want to tell the exact story of the movies. Marty and Doc Brown's adventures are iconic, and any attempt to outdo them will fail. Instead, let's make the idea of an earnest kid, a crazy scientist, and a car that can travel through time and see where we can go with it. Now, technically, there's already a show out there that's inspired by Back to the Future, but Rick and Morty is a very irreverent show that feels like it's mocking B2F rather than paying homage to it. We feel like there should be a more sincere take on this concept. Young folks these days have a lot of anxieties about the present and the future. Perhaps the kind of show our remake needs to be would allow the protagonist to explore the future they're afraid of, or the past events that led to the state of the world today. Back to the Future can never be a grim and serious show, but it could try to resonate with the feelings that its audience deals with day in and out. Next, can third time be the charm for Ghostbusters? The Ghostbusters franchise got off to a really good start with a true classic movie, and things went really wrong from there. The sequels weren't as good, the remake became a lightning rod for controversy, and while Afterlife got decent reviews, it didn't really set a course for the franchise's future. What our Ghostbusters show needs to do is get back to the basics. In fact, unlike the last two remakes, this one should even continue to take place in the 80s. You have your team of Ghostbusters, which should have both men and women, and every episode sees them busting a ghost of the day. An overarching plot for the show could work, but it shouldn't take itself so seriously. Casting this show should be the easiest thing in the world. Call SNL and see if they have any cast members they want to get rid of. And the writing of the show should be light and breezy, without any attempts to react to real-world circumstances. Now, you are probably waiting for us to bring up Top Gun, so here we are. Of the movies we've mentioned so far, Top Gun is the one that's most likely to get a show or something. Top Gun Maverick flew into cinemas and destroyed everyone's expectations of box office credibility. As it happens, Maverick actually introduces a great concept for a show. Obviously, Tom Cruise isn't gonna be in the show. He might do a few cameos, but he's exclusively a big screen guy. The show could instead pick up where Maverick left off, following the further adventures of that class of Top Gun cadets. While Rooster's arc concluded in the movie, we didn't get to see too much of the other characters, so we can focus more on them while finding new avenues to explore with Rooster too. We're taking advance credit for any Top Gun show announcements that might come up. Next, you can't do a list like this without mentioning Stephen King at all. Our show idea in this case might surprise you. When it comes to Stephen King on the small screen, Stranger Things covers pretty much all the bases of the movie from the 80s based on his books. You have a little It, a little Stand By Me, and a little Firestarter. Which other movie of his from the 80s needs representation? How about Pet Sematary? One of King's most iconic books, Pet Sematary has been adapted twice already. The one from the 80s was pretty good, and honestly the best version of the book's story that we're likely to get. How about we dig a little deeper into the lore? Jude Crandall is the one who introduces Lewis to the the pet cemetery, giving him the idea to bury Church the cat there. He has his own backstory of how he learned of the burial ground, and he resurrected his dog Spot by burying him there. You could get a pretty interesting 6 to 10 episodes limited series elaborating on that story in more detail. Maybe get King himself to consult on the show. What's great about Pet Cemetery is that the idea of the burial ground would appeal to anyone, so you're basically guaranteed to get an audience for this show. Couple that with the clout that Stephen King's name carries, and you have a ratings hit on your hands. For our next pick, we wouldn't leave The Karate Kid off a list like this. You know, setting aside the details of the movie like Danny and Mr. Miyagi, the idea of a master training a kid in the ways of karate is a timeless idea. It'll never not be an inspiring story of being able to get stronger and more fearless. And that's why we think that The Karate Kid is ripe for the TV treatment. So we're gonna leave aside the original movie and the Jaden Smith remake and come up with a whole new storyline. When thinking of a motivation for the main characters to seek out a karate master, there are loads of issues affecting kids in school these days. We wouldn't want a Karate Kid show to get too serious about the struggles of being a student in the 2020s. We just want those kids to feel seen by the show. That will make the impact of the protagonist's story to karate mastery feel a lot more satisfying and impactful. And it'll make today's audiences actually appreciate the show rather than seeing it as a cash grab. Our next choice is going back to boldness. RoboCop. A RoboCop show? We know it sounds crazy, but here's out. The impression that the average person has of the RoboCop movie is that it was super violent flick about a cyborg cop violently killing criminals. It's probably the last thing Hollywood should make in a socio-political climate where police brutality is on a rise in the US and authoritarianism is becoming fashionably throughout the world. But RoboCop doesn't have to represent those ideas. It can be used to critique them instead. Don't forget that RoboCop was always meant to be a satire of the issues plaguing the US at the time. And while the movie wasn't directly commenting on the nature of politics, a new RoboCop show can do just that. While still retaining the grisly sense of humor, our proposed RoboCop show will explore the ethics of letting this thing roam around the city. Now, supposedly there is a RoboCop show in development, but we haven't heard anything about it. We'll be glad to let the studio copy our idea as long as the entire staff of the studio and the cast of the show subscribes to this channel. Finally, let's consider another easy win, Blade Runner. Ridley Scott's seminal sci-fi classic may not have set the world on fire when it came out, but it's become a cult classic over the years. So did the sequel Blade Runner 2049, which also had the distinction of putting Denis Villeneuve on the map. Around the time of 2049's release, a fair bit of content was created to flesh out the universe of Blade Runner, but a TV show would have been something even better. What should a Blade Runner show be about? Well, it probably shouldn't be about replicants. The universe of this series should be about so much more than androids and the people hunting them. That also means the show can't be called Blade Runner, but that's fine. We're thinking it might be time to go back to the source here. Blade Runner was originally based on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the novel from Philip K. Dick, but the movie went far afield from the book. Our Blade Runner show would tackle the themes of the novel within the context of the movie universe, showcasing interpersonal relationships and relationships with animals, as well as exploring the concept of religion. That's it for today's video. What other classics from the 80s need a TV treatment? Brainstorm your idea and pitches in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.